The ultimatum. The massive Craxian warship cast a shadow over Manhattan that stretched for miles. Similar vessels loomed over every major city on Earth, their hulls like obsidian mountains suspended in the sky. They had appeared simultaneously, without warning, emerging from what their commanders called null space, a concept that made Earth's leading physicists furiously scribble equations only to crumple them moments later. For 3 days, the ships simply hovered, silent and watchful. Then the transmission came. Supreme Commander Zex of the Craxian hegemony appeared on every screen on the planet simultaneously. The alien's cephalopod-like head featured 6 eyes arranged in a circular pattern, skin the color of burnished copper, and a mouth filled with what appeared to be translucent teeth. The being wore an elaborate uniform festooned with what humans assumed were military decorations. People of Earth, the translation began. Your primitive world has been selected for incorporation into the Craxian hegemony. Our empire spans 17 galactic sectors and includes over 300 subjugated species. Your surrender is expected within 72 Earth hours. Resistance will result in planetary sterilization using our quantum dissolution technology. We are generous. We are inevitable. The transmission ended, leaving humanity in collective shock. In the basement of a nondescript government building in Virginia, Dr. Elena Reyes rewound the message for the 13th time. As Earth's leading xenolinguist, she had been developing theoretical frameworks for alien communication for years. Now, confronted with the real thing, something felt off. The syntax is too perfect, she muttered, making another note. The idioms, the cultural references, it's like they studied our broadcasts but don't understand the nuances. Elena's phone rang. Dr. Rice, this is General Marshall. We need you at the Pentagon. Now. 4 hours later, Elena sat in her room with Earth's hastily assembled crisis team. Colonel Way, a brilliant military strategist, paced nervously. Dr. James Abrams, a quantum physicist with 3 Nobel Prizes, stared at equations on his tablet. General Marshall and representatives from 17 nations watched Elena with desperate hope. So you're saying they might be bluffing? General Marshall asked after Elena presented her findings. I'm saying their communication patterns show inconsistencies. Their grammar is technically perfect but lacks natural flow. They use military terminology that exactly mirrors our own. And most importantly, their technical descriptions of their weapons contain physical impossibilities. Dr. Abrams nodded vigorously. The quantum dissolution they described would violate at least 3 fundamental laws of physics. Their ships shouldn't even be able to fly based on the propulsion system they claim to use. So they're lying, Colonel Way said flatly. Or they don't fully understand their own technology, Elena suggested. There's something fundamentally off about this entire situation. The Secretary General of the UN leaned forward. Doctor, we have less than 60 hours before their deadline. The world is in panic. Market crashes, religious upheavals, mass migrations from cities. What exactly are you proposing? Elena exchanged glances with Abrams. I'm proposing we call their bluff. If I'm right, the Craxians have conquered other worlds through fear, not actual superior firepower. They expect us to surrender without question. And if you're wrong? Someone asked. Elena took a deep breath. Then we're no worse off than we would be by surrendering immediately. After heated debate, a plan emerged. Earth would request a diplomatic meeting aboard the Craxian flagship. The delegation would include Elena, Dr. Abrams, Colonel Way, and a small security team. Their mission: gather information and test the Craxians' claims. When the human shuttle docked with the massive alien flagship, Elena felt her heart hammering. The interior of the ship was vast, with curved corridors lit by pulsing blue light. The Craxians moved gracefully on their 4 lower limbs, upper appendages manipulating equipment that looked advanced beyond human understanding. Supreme Commander Zex received them in what appeared to be a command center. Up close, the alien was even more imposing, standing nearly 3 meters tall. You come to discuss terms of surrender? Zex asked, the translation device around his neck producing flawless English. "We come to better understand what joining the hegemony would mean for Earth," Colonel Wei replied diplomatically. Zex made a gesture that might have been satisfaction. "We will demonstrate our power so you understand the consequences of resistance." On a massive view screen, they watched as a Craxian ship fired a beam of intense light at an uninhabited area of the Pacific Ocean. The resulting explosion sent water thousands of feet into the air, creating a mushroom cloud visible from space. Dr. Abrams discreetly checked readings on a device he'd smuggled aboard. He caught Elena's eye and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Conventional explosives with light effects. Powerful, but not the physics-defying weapon they had claimed. "Impressive," Elena said. "Your quantum dissolution technology seems quite effective. Does it utilize temporal field manipulation to achieve molecular disassociation?" The question was complete nonsense. Technobabble she had invented on the spot. But Zex hesitated only momentarily before responding. "Of course. The temporal fields are essential to the process." Elena smiled politely while her mind raced. The Supreme Commander had just confirmed her suspicion. He didn't understand the technology he wielded. When they returned to Earth, the crisis team gathered to share findings. "Their ship's layout defies military logic," Colonel Wei reported. "No defensive fallback positions, minimal internal security, weapon systems exposed to critical damage points. Their advanced displays are running on what amounts to a sophisticated version of Linux," added the tech specialist who had surreptitiously scanned their systems. "And their weapons, while powerful, are conventional," Dr. Abrams confirmed. "Nothing close to what they claimed. No physics-breaking technology whatsoever." Elena presented her conclusion. "The Craxian hegemony appears to be an empire built on intimidation rather than actual technological superiority. They expect species to surrender out of fear without testing their claims." "So what do we do with this information?" General Marshall asked. "We still have warships hovering over every major city." Elena's expression turned determined. "We do something the Craxians have never encountered before. We question everything. We expose their bluff. And most importantly, we refuse to be afraid." As the deadline approached, Earth enacted its unprecedented plan. Instead of surrendering, they responded with detailed technical questions about Craxian technology that revealed contradictions. They broadcast messages that subtly mocked the inconsistencies in Craxian threats. Most importantly, they showed no fear. Supreme Commander Zex appeared on screens worldwide again, his copper skin now darker with what humans correctly interpreted as anger. "Your time has expired. Prepare for." Elena cut in on the transmission, addressing not just Earth but the Craxian fleet. "Before you demonstrate your power, Supreme Commander, perhaps you could explain how your quantum dissolution technology compensates for the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Our scientists are particularly interested in how you've overcome the fundamental barrier of simultaneous position and momentum measurement." It was technobabble again, but with just enough real physics to confuse anyone who didn't truly understand the science. Zex visibly faltered, his 6 eyes blinking rapidly. "That is, classified information," he finally managed. "Of course," Elena replied smoothly. "And the neutrino containment protocols for your null space drives. Our readings show unusual patterns that suggest potential catastrophic failure in your fleet's central power distribution network." This was a complete fabrication, but the effect was immediate. Several Craxian officers in the background began frantically checking their instruments. A new countdown began, but this time Earth wasn't waiting in fear. They were systematically dismantling the credibility of the mighty Craxian hegemony, one scientific impossibility at a time. The human response. "Operation Mockingbird is in effect," Colonel Wei announced to the crisis team, now operating from a hardened facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 1 had been simple. Confusion. Earth had responded to Craxian ultimatums with a barrage of technical questions that revealed contradictions in their claimed capabilities. Broadcasts worldwide showed scientists calmly pointing out the physical impossibilities of Craxian weapons. Comedy shows produced skits about the mighty empire that couldn't get its story straight. The Craxians' response was telling. Their ships repositioned repeatedly, seemingly unsure whether to attack or retreat. Their communications became less coherent, filled with contradictory demands and increasingly desperate threats. They're off-script, Alina observed. Their entire conquest strategy depends on immediate surrender through intimidation. They don't know what to do when a species questions them. Phase 2 began 48 hours after the deadline passed. Infiltration. Dr. Abrams had developed a method to penetrate Craxian communication systems, using their own transmission protocols against them. Earth began broadcasting modified Craxian messages to their fleet, introducing subtle errors that created confusion in their command structure. They're arguing among themselves, reported the intelligence analyst monitoring their communications. The Supreme Commander is being questioned by his subordinates. Several ships have broken formation. Meanwhile, Earth's defensive posture changed. Rather than preparing conventional weapons that would be useless against the alien fleet, they deployed Alina's linguistic weapons and Abrams' technological countermeasures. Special transmitters created interference patterns that disrupted Craxian targeting systems. Hacking attempts probed deeper into their networks, revealing more weaknesses. On the 7th day of the standoff, something unexpected happened. "We're receiving a transmission," the communications officer announced. "But it's not on the usual Craxian channels. It's requesting a private audience with Dr. Reyes." The being on the secure channel was Craxian, but smaller than the others they'd seen, with laboratory markings instead of military insignia. "My name is Scientist First Class Nix," the alien said, voice trembling. "What you are doing is unprecedented. No species has ever questioned our technology before. Why are you contacting me?" Alina asked cautiously. "Because you've recognized something that few within the hegemony acknowledge openly." Nix's 6 eyes darted nervously. "Most of our technology is not our own. We discovered ancient ruins across the galaxy with functioning machines. We learned to operate them, but we don't truly understand how they work." This confirmed everything Alina had suspected. "You've been bluffing your way across the galaxy." "The Craxian hegemony began as traders, not warriors," Nix explained. "When we found the ruins and their technology, we gained an advantage. Primitive worlds saw our ships and surrendered. Each conquest added to our legend. Soon, species surrendered upon our arrival without resistance. Until humans," Alina said. "Until humans," Nix agreed. "Your species asks questions. You demand explanations. You laugh in the face of threats. The Supreme Commander doesn't know how to respond." "What will happen now?" Alina asked. "The command structure is fragmenting. Some advocate for a full retreat to preserve the illusion of our power. Others demand a real attack to make an example of Earth. I believe you should know the truth about our weaknesses before decisions are made." When the transmission ended, Alina shared everything with the crisis team. The revelation changed their strategy entirely. Operation Mockingbird evolved into something more ambitious. "If the Craxian command structure is already fragmenting," Colonel Wei said, "we can accelerate the process." Phase 3 began immediately. Revelation. Earth used the information provided by Nix to broadcast directly to the Craxian fleet. Not threats, but truth, exposing the contradictions in their own history and technology. The messages were carefully crafted to cause maximum doubt without triggering a desperate attack. "Some ships are powering down weapons systems," reported the monitoring station. "Others are pulling back to higher orbits." But Supreme Commander Zex wasn't surrendering so easily. His flagship repositioned over New York City, weapons visibly charging. A new transmission arrived, his copper skin now almost black with rage. "Enough games. Surrender or watch your greatest city burn." This time, Earth didn't respond with words. Instead, they activated the countermeasures Dr. Abrams had developed based on Nix's information. Targeted electromagnetic pulses, precisely calibrated to the frequency vulnerabilities of Craxian systems, shot upward from hidden installations. On the view screens, they watched as the flagship's lights flickered. The weapon ports closed automatically as emergency systems engage. Similar effects rippled through the fleet. "They're not disabled," Abrams cautioned, "just temporarily disrupted." But it proves Nix was telling the truth about their vulnerabilities. The next transmission came not from Zex, but from a different Craxian, one wearing the insignia of their ruling council. "I am Overseer Trawl of the Hegemony Council," the new figure announced. "Supreme Commander Zex has been relieved of duty. His handling of the Earth situation has been inadequate." Elena stepped forward. "Overseer Trawl, we have no desire for conflict with the Craxian hegemony, but we will not surrender our planet based on threats and deception. Your species is unusual," Trawl acknowledged. "No other world has responded as you have." "Perhaps that says more about your conquest methods than about us," Elena suggested. What followed was unprecedented in Craxian history: actual negotiation. Earth demanded the withdrawal of the fleet and recognition of human sovereignty. The Craxians, desperate to prevent further erosion of their galactic facade, agreed with surprising speed. But the most significant development came after the official negotiations. Reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Other subjugated species, emboldened by Earth's example, were beginning to question their Craxian overlords. The carefully maintained illusion of invincibility was cracking everywhere. 3 weeks after the Craxian fleet departed Earth orbit, Elena received another secret transmission from Nix. "The hegemony is changing," the scientist reported. "The Council has been forced to acknowledge the unsustainability of rule through deception. Several worlds have already established their independence. Others are demanding technological exchange rather than subjugation." "And how do the Craxians feel about this?" Elena asked. "There is resistance from the old guard," Nix admitted. "But many of us welcome the change. Living a lie for generations has stunted our own development. Perhaps now we can become genuine innovators rather than mere inheritors of ancient technology." In a special address to the United Nations, Elena reflected on humanity's narrow escape. "The Craxian hegemony taught us an important lesson," she told the assembled delegates. "Throughout the galaxy, fear may be the most powerful weapon of all. But humans have a special resistance: curiosity. When threatened, we don't just feel fear. We ask questions. We analyze. We seek understanding." She smiled. The mighty Craxian hegemony came to Earth expecting immediate surrender. Instead, they encountered humanity's most formidable trait: our refusal to accept intimidation when something doesn't make sense. They dared to threaten humans with inconsistent science and hollow claims. Now, the entire galaxy is laughing at them, and a new era of interstellar relations has begun. In orbit above Earth, the first diplomatic vessel from the reformed Craxian Commonwealth prepared to dock with the International Space Station. The age of fear was ending. The age of questions had begun.